Hello everyone and welcome to today's stream. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1920. Yes, Jekyll is the correct pronunciation. Now before we get started, I do have a GoFundMe down below, so donate like $10 if you want. I mean, donate if you want to. Don't donate $10, donate something more. It's your choice ultimately if you do or if you do not and what you donate. But anyway, let's just get started. John Barrymore. Now, this is really an oversimplification of the original story. Basically, in the original story, Jekyll was not his own good side. He was both his own good and evil. But Hyde was actually just plain evil. And in fact, it's basically, in the original story, Hyde was just a glorified alias that Jekyll used so he could indulge in his worst traits without bringing shame to himself. And at the end of the day, it's ultimately Jekyll not being able to take responsibility for his actions. Also, Jekyll was 50 in the original story. Yes, 50. Hyde was actually like half that age, and he was also more like someone with dwarfism. He was both younger and shorter than Jekyll. Young master, yes, yeah. As I said, he was not young in the original story. He was 50 for goodness sake. Poon does actually come from the original story. Lanyon here, his first name was actually Hasty, not Richard. Richard actually comes from is actually the name of a completely different character, Enfield, I think. Oh, yeah, that character's name is actually pronounced Carrie. You know, British English and all that. And in the original story, his given name was Danvers. I have no idea why they changed the names. Changed the given names. It's a rather pointless change, which really doesn't make sense. Hasty and Danvers are perfectly good given names. Why change them? Now, if you can hear a little fan from my computer, I don't actually have my headphones on. I wear the headphones when, you know, the video we're watching actually has sound, but today, because it's silent, no need to do that. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with headphones, possibly because while the last one I had was wonderful, it was wireless, it had a microphone, it was wonderful, but at the same time it was actually clamping my glasses into the side of my head. Now, in the original story, Jekyll, neither Jekyll or Hyde are the protagonists. It doesn't follow them, it follows a character named Gabriel John Utterson, who's actually Jekyll's lawyer. And, the whole... There's Brandon Hurst again. We previously saw him in White Zombie. And really, it's a good thing he was able to make the leap from silent to talkies. Because not everyone was able to do that. Yeah, there was no such character in the original book. There was no romance or anything like that. Romance is it's a lot of nonsense in this romance thing. Robert Louis Stevenson saw no need to put romance in the original story. And we don't really go into Carrie's family life either. We don't know if he has... and there you go. Here's Utterson, his name shortened just John Utterson, the protagonist of the original story. Yeah, as I was saying, the original story, it follows Utterson. We don't learn that Jekyll and Hyde are the same character until the end, where the whole thing is learned of in a written confession from Jekyll. Now, I'm aware of a stage play that keeps the mystery bit, and actually tells it in chronological order with a bit of dramatic irony. Utterson doesn't know that Jekyll and Hyde are one and the same, and that, but the audience does. So that's actually really interesting, and I wonder why that's not done more often. That was also done in the 1986 adaptation, which is actually the closest a screen adaptation to the original book I've ever seen. Excuse me. I'm just gonna say we're probably gonna be seeing Brandon Hurst again at some point. Maybe if we ever get around to watching the 1923 adaptation of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Also, Carrie was 70 in the original story. Brandon Hurst, on the other hand, is uh, quite a bit younger. He's 54 in this. Edward Enfield. Why? Why change the name? We already have Edward Hyde. Oh, good lord. Did they change Hyde's given name? I mean, Hyde's pretty much just a glorified alias, so I don't suppose it really matters. Well, he is in the original story, but that's pretty much something that pretty much every adaptation forgets. As faithful as an adaptation can be, they always forget the bit about Hyde basically just being a glorified alias. Yeah, I think John Barrymore was 38 in this, so yeah, obviously Jekyll and Carrie are older, but if going by the original book, if Jekyll is in his 30s, would that make would that put Hyde in his late teens? I don't know. I don't know. When you think about it, it maybe makes Hyde kind of a. I don't know. Does that make Hyde a. Think of it like that. If you were to keep the difference in Hyde looking younger, would that form a juvenile delinquency allegory? I have no idea. Yeah, and this is where we realize he's more um, Lord Henry Wotton from uh, The Picture of Dorian Gray, transplanted into a different story. By a different author. I actually quite like that story. If you've ever read it, it's if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's an excellent story. Oh, I don't know, a few dozen scars, bad back, an injury that's causing me pain well into my middle age for the rest of my life. Now, I'm actually of the opinion that Jekyll and Hyde should be played by two different actors. Now, there should be a bit of a resemblance, as Utterson initially believes Hyde to be Jekyll's illegitimate son, but with Hyde looking young enough, you know, like, yeah, there was no Gina in the original story, but with Hyde looking young enough to be Jekyll's illegitimate son, and also being short enough to maybe have look like he has dwarfism. Maybe he actually does, which in case maybe that's something that's not aged well. Yeah, I really think it would work better if the two were played by completely different actors. I mean, look at it this way. Do you need? I mean, look at it this way. um, you didn't for the Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno adaptation of the Incredible Hulk that aired on television. They didn't just have Bill Bixby play both roles or have Lou Ferrigno play both roles. They had two different. They had two different. Bill Bixby played Dr. Banner, and Lou Ferrigno played the Hulk. Why can't you do that for Jekyll and Hyde, a story that was an inspiration to the Incredible Hulk? Yeah, now back from that bit about there being no Gina in the original book, this whole two love interests thing is a bunch of nonsense. It's pretty much I think it was invented for the stage, but there was no real point for it. There's no real point to it. It's just gratuitous romance. Not that I have a problem with romance, it's just that you do not add romance to a story that doesn't have it. That never had it to begin with. Though, I must admit, if done well, I don't have a problem with it. I see he's probably overlooked caution. Yeah, as I already said, that was not why Jekyll made made the potion in the original story. It was basically just so he could indulge in his worst traits without any fear of bringing shame to himself. And it was basically made because of a midlife crisis on Jekyll's part. As I said, he was 50 in the original story. Okay, now this was done without makeup this bit. It was actually just John Barrymore's, it was all him, especially his natural ability to distort his own features. Yeah, now obviously that bit was done with makeup. Yeah, and obviously one of the fake fingers goes flying off because of those over-dramatic contortions. Yeah, now that's basically more in line with the original story. It's basically Hyde just being used to do what Jekyll could not without bringing shame to himself. But there was not a lot of detail of what was going on. Yeah, obviously in real life poison doesn't work that quickly, but clearly they just had to, yeah, obviously filmmakers just want to make it quick. Yeah, you see, Edward Hyde. And then they went ahead and changed Enfield's given name to from Richard to Edward. Well, yeah, that was a question in the original story, and pretty much uh, what drove the plot initially. Who was this Hyde that Jekyll was leaving everything to? I don't know. Maybe this qualifies as padding a lot of this because as someone familiar with the original story, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. This expansion is anything more but padding. And I'd say the bit with Millicent is definitely padding. And considering she's not even from the original story, it's pretty obvious anything involving her is. Excuse me. What the hell is that in my slipper? Random piece of paper. Oh, jeez. This mic really does pick up everything. Yeah, Hyde trampling a child was actually something from early in the original story, technically happening just before, which was later related to Utterson by Enfield. What is that hand? Oh lord, that's just a crazy hand position. Excuse me. Now, Carrie's death was not nearly so dramatic. I mean, it was murder, but it was murder, and he was clubbed to death. But it wasn't because he discovered Jekyll and Hyde are one and the same. It was basically just something Hyde did just because. Oh, there I go, hitting the waste basket with my foot. Would have been better off throwing the walking stick into the river. Is there even a river anywhere near Soho? I have no idea. I mean, I know about the Thames, but, London's a pretty big place. Now, 1920 was a year of three adaptations from this story. Another was called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, much like this one, but the other one was an unofficial adaptation. F.W. Murnau, who would later adapt Dracula as Nosferatu, he adapted this story as the head of Janus. Janus being a Roman god of the doorway, has a head on, as has a face on both sides of his head, the front and the back. And the transformation was brought on by a bust of the god Janus. Now, in the head of Janus, the dual role was renamed Dr. Warren and Mr. O'Connor, which, yeah, that sounds somewhat anti-Irish. But obviously, with it being an unofficial adaptation and the story not yet a public domain, obviously, they, Murnau couldn't use the original names. But apparently did he did use the name Lanyon for whatever reason. The dual role was played by Conrad Veidt, who went on to, who also appeared that year in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari as Caesar. He went on to appear in The Man Who Laughs as Gwynplaine. He was in the 1940 version of The Thief of Baghdad as Jafar, who of course was a character who is of course the inspiration from the Disney villain Jafar, right down to being an unflattering caricature of Conrad Veidt. And he was also in Casablanca. And Conrad Veidt as Gwynplaine was also the inspiration for the Batman villain, the Joker. So he's Conrad Veidt has found immortality in more ways than one. Yeah, now, that was John Barrymore in the spider costume also. Yeah, so if you haven't noticed, there's a bit of a spider motif when it comes to Hyde. And there is a scene in the book that's actually relayed via the confession where Jekyll did wake up as Hyde. Now, I'm pretty sure they were just taking bits and pieces of the original story and rearranging them here. But then again, that seems to be the general thing for adaptations in general. But if we're gonna do that, they might as well just tell it in chronological order. I'm not really a fan of the romance angle. I mean, as I said, I'm not a fan of adding romance to something that didn't already have romance in it, unless it's done well, and that's very, very rare. Honestly, I have a similar thing with action being added to non-action stories. Unless it's done very well, I don't really care for that. Oh, you're probably going to get a kick out of this, but in the head of Janus, the pool analog, simply known as Warren's butler, was actually played by Bela Lugosi. If you don't know who that is, he was a Hungarian actor uh, who, well, before emigrating, he had appeared in a German adaptation of the book The Deer Slayer, which is chronologically the first in the Leatherstocking tales, which feature, which in chronological order is you have the Deer Slayer, then the Last of the Mohicans, you have the third book, the Pathfinder, then the fourth one, the Pioneers, which was actually the first book to be written, and the Deer Slayer was the last, and then you have the finale, which is the Prairie. Um, Now, Bela Lugosi played the character of Chingachgook in The Deer Slayer. If you know who that is, thank you for being well read. Or if you've just seen an adaptation of The Last of the Mohicans, also thank you. Yeah, basically back in Europe, Bela Lugosi was cast uh, in a number of roles, but it was really the whole immigration to America thing that ended up getting him typecast. Obviously, with one of with his most famous role, a curse really, of Count Dracula. Uh, First played the role on stage, on Broadway, then he played the role for Universal in their film adaptation of the stage play. So it was a film adaptation of a stage adaptation. So pretty far removed, so somewhat removed from the original book. But to their credit, they did try to reinsert some things from the original novel. He originated the role of Igor in The Son of Frankenstein. First time the character ever appeared. He appeared in The Body Snatcher, opposite Boris Karloff, which was the last time they were ever in a film together. There was supposedly a rivalry between those two, and they were actually good friends in real life. He reprised his role of Dracula for the only time on screen in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And, he went on to appear in some Ed Wood films. Which, if you're wondering why he appears in the film Ed Wood as a character, that's basically why. But then again, it's a biopic, so you probably guessed that. Of course, with his typecasting, Bela Lugosi was never cast as a Jekyll and Hyde. At least not to my knowledge. And I've looked at his profile on IMDb, and he's, I have no memory of it. I mean, Lord knows he was old enough to play Jekyll. By that point. Of course, eventually he would have been too old. I mean, he was 49 when he played Dracula on screen in 1931, and obviously in 1948 he was 17 years later he was in his 60s, 66. Yes, and like in the original story, Hyde does poison himself, but there is no reverting back to the original story. He poisons himself to avoid, execution because he killed a member of parliament. And no transformation back. His body is found, and you only really discover what's happened to Jekyll when his confession is read by Utterson. The fate of Jekyll to everyone else is just a mystery. To basically the world is a mystery. And now that's weird, isn't it? Basically, they have no idea. Hyde has killed Dr. Jekyll. So it's kind of a reverse. No one knows what happens to Jekyll in the original story, but as far as this film is concerned, as far as the characters are concerned, Hyde escaped and is still out there. They don't. Lanyon knows that. Lanyon knows, but everyone else doesn't. So anyway, that was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Excellent movie. A bit of padding could have been shaved off, but anyway, good.